Serrasalmus is the most complex genus, with roughly 32 species, of which only around 10 to 12 are in the hobby. These fish are extremely difficult to identify, and I think the best way is to ask, where's the black? Because the black markings on the tail are a pretty good way to see what species you may be looking at. For example, Serrasalmus rhombeus, the black piranha, has a black bar across the margin of the tail, while Serrasalmus irritans has a thin V-shaped black marking. It is not unusual for several species to occur together, and sorting out a species that is less common is not an easy task, especially if you're uncertain where it was caught. To get this out of the way, the two biggest species that will reach 50 centimeters or 18 inches are Serrasalmus rhombeus, the black piranha, and Serrasalmus manueli. You can see them here in a market in Brazil. Both of these species are widespread, occurring in both the Orinoco and Amazon basin, as well as the rivers of the Brazilian Shield, such as the Xingu, Tapajós, and Tocantins. The black piranha, because it is widespread, also varies quite a bit in coloration, but we can generally say that large adults are more or less black, with red eyes. In rivers where the water is clear, they often have a patchy or blotch pattern, made up of gray patches of different sizes. By contrast, in white water, they can have more reflective silver scales on their flanks, while in black water habitats they are more dull black in color. When they are small, all Serrasalmus have silver bodies and spots, but as adults they usually lose their spots and also the black marking on the tail. This is a black piranha of around 10 centimeters or 4 inches in size. At least a couple of public aquariums have managed to breed this fish, but it should be near impossible in the average home aquarium. To keep large black piranhas together will require gigantic aquariums and well thought out visual barriers with complex areas made of sticks and branches to allow subdominant animals to get away from the dominant ones. In nature, black piranhas may occur in small groups until they reach maturity, but most of the time they are seen as individuals. In the vicinity of other fish, they can parasitize by biting their ventral, anal, and caudal fins. Serrasalmus are shy and wary fish, extremely difficult to approach in nature, as you can see from this video of Serrasalmus rhombeus in the Xingu. The fish are curious about the sounds made by the diver, but only cautiously come in to investigate. Without doubt, they will kill and eat small fish, but they are not efficient ambush predators like wolffish or pike cichlids. This brings us to species similar to the black piranha, and this is where it gets tricky, especially if you want to tell them apart from live fish. Similar piranhas include Serrasalmus odyssei, which has a narrow and not straight margin on the caudal. Serrasalmus altuvei, which has a broader black margin than that of rhombeus and a strong black V on the caudal peduncle. This closely related group of Serrasalmus are really challenging to tell apart, and they may vary in color depending on their size, diet, location, and season that they were collected. Also similar, but with a very faded black marking on the caudal, is Serrasalmus compressus, a species frequently mixed into shipments of young black piranhas. These species, closely related to the black piranha, do not match it in adult size, however, and usually reach a maximum size of around 20 to 25 centimeters, or 8 to 10 inches. Also similar is Serrasalmus irritans, but it has smaller spots, and you can see the markings in the tail are very different. Instead of the black band on the edge of the tail, the margin of the tail is clear, and there's a black band across the base. These are not seen often in the hobby because they come from the Orinoco, not the Peruvian western Amazon, where most of the Serrasalmus in the hobby are exported from. These young fish already live solitary lives, schooling with other equal-sized characins they can attack. In the aquarium, they are of course terrible on each other, and it's nearly impossible to grow out a group of fish from the rhombeus group from a small size to adult. Because wild piranhas of small size occur together and often get exported as small black piranhas, you'll often see that when wild piranhas arrive, there's a bit of everything in the mix. Typically, this means that Pygocentrus naterreri, the red-belly piranha, serrulatus, rhombeus, odyssei, and perhaps the species with a bright red chest, but otherwise very similar to rhombeus, Serrasalmus sanchezi, are within the same shipment. Serrasalmus serrulatus is also exported occasionally. It has larger spots, but also the snout is much more blunt and bulldog-like. Serrasalmus serrulatus is not as aggressive and is potentially a candidate to keep as a group. Piranhas occur as far south as Argentina, and in the south you could find the yellow form of Pygocentrus naterreri alongside Serrasalmus spilopleura and Serrasalmus marginatus. Serrasalmus maculatus and the red belly will frequently school together, and in the Pantanal these piranhas can occur in mixed groups of approximately equal-sized animals. Serrasalmus maculatus is one of the most widespread species found from the Madre de Dios in Peru throughout central Brazil and the Pantanal and south to Argentina. This river shows you how even in the dry season many of these habitats are dynamic. The plants, the fine sand substrate, and all of the river is in motion, and the piranha schools swim just above the plants. They are not the apex predator here. Giant otters, anaconda, caiman, salminis, introduced peacock bass, and any number of fish-eating birds can also potentially eat the piranhas. Here in the Pantanal, the red-bellied piranha is more yellow, and other than the more blunt snout, it is hard to distinguish from the Serrasalmus maculatus, especially since they school together in mixed troops of approximately equal size. In some regions, especially young Serrasalmus maculatus can be really bright yellow and very beautiful, and they can get along better than most other Serrasalmus species. It is also one of the few Serrasalmus that has been bred in the aquarium. As they mature, this bright yellow color will be less intense, and in breeding dress, they are almost completely black. It is quite difficult to tell piranha male and females apart. Perhaps in some species, the shape of the anal fin will give away the males, which should also turn darker in color, at least during breeding season. Few groups of fish that are as popular in the hobby as the piranhas have had such limited success for breeders. Similar to both Serrasalmus spilopleura and maculatus is Serrasalmus brandti, but it occurs only together with Pygocentrus piraya in the São Francisco basin of Brazil, far from the other similar species found elsewhere in South America. Finally, we have to discuss some of the more rare ones, even if you will likely not see these fish offered in the trade. Some of them come from really remote locations, such as the Orinoco Delta in Venezuela, where no exports have occurred in the last decade or more. The delta is home to several endemic species, such as Serrasalmus nalseni. Even more obscure is this one, Serrasalmus neveriensis, that comes from the Rio Neveri, a small river that goes into the Caribbean near the city of Barcelona in Venezuela, and is not connected to any of the larger river basins of South America. There are two Serrasalmus piranhas with a big humeral spot, and they sometimes get confused. The smaller one, without the tiger stripes, is Serrasalmus eigenmanni. It is a very nice species that is widespread and gets only about 20 centimeters or 8 inches. Similar, but much larger, is Serrasalmus manueli. This is one of the giants, with a huge mouth and not easy to keep, because they like fast-flowing water and rapids. The species is much more widespread than one would think, occurring in the Xingu, Tapajós, and Tocantins rivers in Brazil, but also in the Orinoco, Ventuari, and Atabapo in Venezuela and Colombia. Young fish have a really nice green color, some vertical bars, and very large eyes. To grow one of these to over 50 centimeters or 18 inches is not easy, because they need a lot of filtration, water changes, and excellent water conditions. In general, aquarium-raised piranhas don't seem to get as big as they do in nature. This is largely to being kept in too small aquaria with high nitrate levels and not enough water flow. Overall, Serrasalmus manueli may be the most difficult, and I think it's impossible to keep them together, especially as they get close to adult size. This is perhaps a good place to note that even medium-sized piranhas have the bite strength to seriously injure their keeper. If you're working in the aquarium, always keep a separator between your hand and the fish. Especially larger piranhas panic easily and will bite if they feel cornered, and the sharp teeth can inflict serious wounds. Use a piece of egg crate sealing panel to build a separator. Move the fish to one side, clean the other side of the tank, and then move the fish to the other side. While many rhombeus type piranhas look similar, the most unusual body shape belongs to Serrasalmus elongatus, often named the trout piranha, because of its slender body shape. This very attractive fish lives on sandy beach habitats of the main branch of the Amazon, but is also found in the Orinoco. Elongatus are very fast-moving fish that easily damage tank mates or each other. This species may be one of the most challenging to keep in a group, despite their relatively small size of around 25 centimeters or 10 inches. Individuals may develop a bright red throat and operculum, while others sport a dark black tail with no visible pattern. This is a striking fish that sadly must be kept alone in the aquarium or with hardy and entirely nocturnal tank mates such as Megalodorus. And finally, the most beautiful of the Serrasalmus, Serrasalmus geryi, the violet line piranha. This piranha has a fleshy violet-colored ridge around the body. This striking feature, smaller adult size of around 20 centimeters or 8 inches, and the limited aggression makes this one of the most sought-after species. To keep a group of the real Serrasalmus in the aquarium is complicated. It requires space, a lot of structures, and ideally a lot of current. If you want to try, I think Serrasalmus maculatus, spilopleura, or geryi are the best bet. Serrasalmus geryi is also one of the most expensive piranhas, and maybe not the best choice to start an experiment in a community tank. In nature, these are found in the Rio Araguaia, the west-sided tributary of the Tocantins. They stay on the edge of the current, under the shadows of water lilies, so I think that the ridge from the front and from the top camouflages the piranhas well between the stems of the lilies. Worth trying if you want to set up a natural-looking tank for them. Don't be fooled by this photo, because the current here, even in the dry season, is so strong that you have to hold on to a rope to take photos. So now we have looked at around 2/3 of piranha species and covered most of the fish you will see imported, as well as some that may not have been kept in the aquarium to my knowledge. There are others, including some like Serrasalmus stagnatalis and Serrasalmus undulatus, that refer to fish described from the early 1800s, where it is uncertain what the fish really look like. There are also others, such as Serrasalmus gouldingi, seen in this photo from the 1990s, when I had a single specimen of this beautiful fish. Well, I hope everyone saw some fish they liked, and hopefully we can do one of these guides with the closest relatives of the piranhas, the pacus, in the future. Make sure to subscribe to this channel if you've made it this far.